all for being here, and a special thank you to the panelists, some incredible regenerative innovators. Really excited to hear their stories, given how Africa and the continent is really, on a huge trajectory for regenerative growth, and really needs the like of these innovators to make sure that the continent is capturing, not only kind of new opportunities in climate financing, but also solving some of the issues that, aren't just challenges in Africa, but around the globe. So really excited to see how you guys are pioneering the way. But just to do some quick round of introductions. So I'm Ariana, founder and CEO of Forested, originally from Hong Kong, but I've been in Ethiopia for about 9 years now. Just a quick intro on Forested. We are an ingredient insets marketplace, essentially a platform for consumer packaged goods companies to decarbonize and regenerate their supply chains through ingredients that are produced by incredible community-led conservation groups across East Africa.
Hi, I'm Simon Davis. I'm from Johannesburg, and I currently live in Johannesburg, and I'm the co-founder of Scarab Tech, and we make very small machines that turn waste plastic into petrol and other fuels.
Hi there. My name is Brett Thompson, co-founder and CEO of New Form Foods. I have worked in alternative proteins for about 15 years now, and part of that being plant-based, but then about 4 years ago, I started a company that is trying to recreate meat without the harm. And we do that by taking a few cells from an animal and scaling it up. We are still in an early stage of our development. We're from Cape Town, South Africa, and we're excited to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Fela. From Nigeria. I am the CEO and also a co-founder at Salubata. At Salubata, our mission is to invent lifestyle technologies that help people and the planet. We currently occupy this niche where we repurpose shoes from old plastic bottles. The bottles in your hands right now, the old ones, we convert them into shoes. I'm currently wearing one of those shoes. Now, beyond the shoes, we also delved into carbon decomposition technologies. I have a very strong background as an environmental scientist, and I'm sure you heard the rest in the conversation. Thank you.
And Fela, maybe you can just lift your foot up so people can see it.
It's a pretty good drip.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. So the topic of our panel is regeneration. We've heard regeneration quite a bit. It's quite a hot topic. We hear it in the context of agriculture. We're hearing it more in the context of business more generally. Would love to know from each of you what regeneration means in the context of your businesses.
Well, in the context of our business, we're really we're picking up the mess of other businesses. We're in the job of sort of dealing with the plastic problem around the globe, which desperately needs some solutions, and recycling really isn't one of them. Cubic solution of turning it into longer lasting goods is one solution. Our thing of like end of lifing it and turning it into something else is another. So our business is really, taking the issues of lots of other business models, the bit that they just forgot about and threw out into the world and made all of our problems, we're dealing with that. So in that sense, yeah, that's the sense that, we're regenerative. But I'll get into more about, how about our business itself in terms of its generation. But that's where we are.
Mm-hmm. Brett, how about you?
Yeah, I think the gentlemen on either side of me are looking at the mess that we've already created and cleaning it up, which is incredibly important. Obviously, we've seen some amazing startups who are doing some fantastic things with what we would have called waste very recently. I think at New Form Foods, we're looking at it slightly differently, and also personally, I want to be part of a generation that ends factory farming and stops something terrible from actually ever coming to the continent of Africa. We see it in South Africa. We have factory farming in South Africa, but ideally, when I think of regenerative as being able to create a technology that's not only just sustainable, that kind of elevates the availability of delicious protein and then stops something pretty bad from coming into place.
Yeah, for me, at Salubata, our mission is to invent lifestyle technologies that help people and the planet. And so people and the planet are the core of what we refer to as regeneration. I'll start with the planet. My background, I have very strong domain expertise in what I'm building, and so I believe that helps to drive that further growth. Beyond that, so we make those shoes from plastics. Before I talk about that, I would say that a lot of us fail to give kudos to the person who actually made plastic out of crude oil, and we call the plastic a mess. And so in social innovation, we fail to forget the side of innovation. And that's what we are bringing back, that, okay, from these old plastic bottles, what happens to them? We are repurposing them and giving them a new life. Now, beyond that, we've also thought about another concept, because the shoes, beyond the fact that you're seeing these shoes now, the shoes are also modular, and so we are offsetting carbon. And we thought about it that, okay, we can do more than offset carbon. We can decompose the carbon. Now, there's a new technology we're working on right now. It's in also, so for every step you take, every mechanical action you take, you trap carbon into your shoe, and you convert that into breathable oxygen. That technology is patented, globally patented already, and with that, we believe we can even carry out, more action. Now, to the aspect of people, for every shoe that's purchased on Salubata, we give 5% to empowering women in underserved communities, because we realize that the downwind impact of these pollutants affect the people in the most, especially the women in these communities. And so I would say, and I highlight that again, that a rocket needs to go to Mars or to Moon. The rocket does not need to go slower. And that's why we've seen, even in our planes right now, people say you have to fly plane less. As human, I think it's less primitive to think that way, because the planes actually need to get to the destination faster. The rockets need to get there faster. We only need to innovate around it and build solutions that can decompose even the carbon. I'll stop there. Thank you.
So I'm hearing some, themes of circularity. So Fela, obviously your business is, has circularity at its core. But if you think about taking this opportunity to educate people a little bit about circularity, how would you define kind of the core principles of circularity and how that is manifesting in your business model?
Can you hear me? Oh. Yeah, so for us, this is what we define as circularity. We make our shoes from plastic waste. That is not circular. Now, we are currently not fully a circular business. Now, our goal is to be able to reach a critical mass of 100,000 shoes per annum. And our plan is to recollect these shoes and the old ones and repurpose them back into other shoes. And that makes the shoes fully circular. And so I think I just answered your question. Thank you.
Yeah. Brett, I know, your business has some differences in not, you didn't mention kind of circularity at the core, but curious to know if you guys are thinking about circularity and, as you grow, how you're going to implement some of these principles.
Again, there are some fundamentals that we looked at it. Look, what we're doing is trying to create meat that tastes exactly the same. It is exactly the same for all intents and purposes, but it doesn't require an animal to be grown for 18 months and then slaughtered. Mm-hmm. So we're doing that in about a month, okay? So we're thinking, I think, similar to what you were mentioning there, it ties in we're trying to make things faster and more efficient, as well as looking at the actual impact. There is a component of what we do where there are outputs and what we use to feed our cells, for example. So how do we recycle them and introduce them back into the system, for example? Another sort of thing, which is literally at the start of our process, is that we actually go to a sanctuary in Greyton, which is 2 hours outside of Cape Town. It's a beautiful place, and we take cells from there. And those sanctuaries are doing a number of great things as well, and we support them. Where they're working with previously farmers that were doing pigs and helping them shift into plant-based or other sources of protein. So I think by some of the partnerships that we're developing, we're definitely finding a way to become more sustainable. But I think we're also a very attractive option to some of the bigger companies that are saying, how do we future-proof our protein in a while? And I think there's going to be a lot of pressure from governments and public to say, you can't do it the same way. And if you can make that efficient, I think that's got to be key at it. And if it's priced well, then regenerative will become a good business model as much as the sustainable conversation has been for however many years.
I'm excited to follow and see how we might see some initiatives around like upcycling from waste as well as those processes.
It's super exciting as well. Like what we produce cells, they produce a lactate, which has got value in itself. For us at the moment, not too much, but there's definitely ways that we can sort of sell that to other people or get introduced to other parts of the chain and the value chain, and definitely components. I mean, a lot of what we're doing is also at some stage will be upcycling. I don't know if that's a correct term. I'm not too nuanced on all this, but we're going to be taking and buying brewing facilities and turning them into meat-making facilities. So there's a lot of sort of exciting aspects of upcycling and sustainable regenerative components that I think we will be able to bring in.
Very cool. Did any of you guys start your businesses without circularity at the core? Obviously, not Brett, but would be great to hear how that transition happened, whether more tactical or philosophical.
Yeah, I mean, for our business, we started the business, but it wasn't even started a business. It was started as a Burning Man project, where we
literally, like, for the festival.
Yeah. We basically got a grant from Burning Man. We said we were going to take waste plastic, turn it into fuel, and use the fuel to run generators and throw parties. So they were waste plastic parties. And from that, we got lots of interest. And anyway, then we were like, actually, there's a need for this kind of technology to get rid of waste plastic. So we were very focused on, well, this is great. You can take this waste product that is littering the earth, has huge environmental consequences, and we can turn it into something useful. But then as you start doing that, you're like, okay, but now you're turning it into petrol or diesel. So while you're dealing with one problem because you're focused at plastic, but then you're like, well, if you turn it into diesel or petrol and burn it, now you're creating CO2, so this contributes to climate change. So on the one hand, you're solving one problem, but then you mix it across. And that's the thing with circularity. It's actually paying attention to everything all of your interaction, not just everything that you're doing, but then what the knock-on effect of that is. So then we look back, and then you have to look back at the model and go, okay, well, we pick up plastic usually for free. It's just lying around. And then we turn it, 1 kilogram of plastic gets turned into 1 liter of fuel, which is worth, say, $1, which is pretty amazing, right? And then you look at how much carbon dioxide is created when you burn that fuel, and then you look for high-quality carbon projects where you can then sort of remove that carbon from the atmosphere. Now, I wish we could do that ourselves immediately, but we can't, so we look for high-quality partners that can. And then we can, and then you look at it and you go, oh, we can build that into the model. We can still actually afford the $15 per ton of CO2, and it still works as a business. But, that thinking evolved. We didn't come to that fully formed, and I don't think anybody does. It's really about looking at your business and really paying attention to all of your inputs and whatever it is that you're outputting and what's the effect of that output, and then, really taking a much more holistic approach. So yeah, I would say that was how thinking developed.
Cool origin story.
Why not Africa Burn?
Yeah, South Africa.
So since all of you are building businesses, I'm sure everyone would love to know, so how do you make money? What is your revenue model? And in your respective kind of regenerative economies, whether it's circular, alternative protein, curious to know from a trends perspective where you see the economic opportunity and growth in this market is. So again, first thing is, what's your revenue model? Second thing is, in your industry, where are you seeing the economic growth? So fella, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you. I must be very plain here. We didn't start with circularity in mind. We didn't start making shoes from plastics. We're making shoes from leather. And I had the domain expertise as an environmental scientist. I was still designing shoes. I started thinking, what if we convert this plastic to shoes? And we also saw a huge market opportunity. In a year alone, the global photo market, the global photo market by 2027 will worth about 560 billion. We already understand the volume of the plastic plague. And so for us, it was a huge market opportunity. And so we're not trying to solve a local problem. I was trying to solve a global problem. And so right now, shoes are being sold in Africa, in Europe, and in Asia, in the United States. And so that is a huge market opportunity for us. Now, additionally, right now it's direct sales. In the coming month, we're also infusing a subscription model. And you need to go to our website and check out the shoes, where you can receive the upper pieces of the shoes. With this, we are able to enable more people wear more shoes from plastics, and we're also able to drive more revenue for ourselves. Additionally, we currently own 2 global patents. Part of our strategy is to license our IPs. Okay, so for example, someone in Ethiopia wants to also produce shoes from plastics, these modular shoes. We can also replicate the same idea, produce locally, and the impact is also localized. Thank you.
I appreciate that you have asked startups about revenue, because I think a lot of startups forget that they actually need to make revenue.
Yeah. You don't need to tell us how much, though.
Yeah, okay, I won't. Well,
Just the model.
I think maybe I'll start with the problem that we saw. And we saw that in the beginning for us, it was let's make burgers. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I knew. I worked in food for 15 years, 10, 15 years. Let's sell burgers. But that actually wasn't the problem that I was trying to solve. What I was trying to solve ultimately was that the food industry in South Africa and throughout the rest of the world were sort of scared of what's next. They were okay with a bit of alternative proteins like plant-based. That was kind of understanding. But when you start changing sort of the fundamental way that we think protein is going to be made and brought to the consumer, you've got a retailer, you've got a farmer, there's a lot of people that are affected. And then initially we were saying we wanted to disrupt that. And then we realized, well, actually we wanted to build a model that was something that could be attractive. And when we approached our customer and said, and our customer is the meat industry, and our customer is food manufacturers, the traditional people. We said, okay, well, we're going to provide you with a technology that you can license, that within a couple of years you will be able to get on your shelves far quicker than you tried it yourself. The conversation's changed. And so that's where I see the market going. I see a significant amount of shifts within the food industry. They understand that there's change happening, but they just don't know how to do it properly. And you have driven people, like the people in this room, who can show them. I think that's what we've looked at. And our revenue model is quite simple. We build a platform similar to what a brewery would look like. Instead of brewing beer, unfortunately, we're brewing meat, which is pretty good too. Beer and meat goes pretty well. That platform is then, that's a sunk cost, that's a fixed cost. And then we license the technology on a subscription basis, meat as a service or MaaS, so that they can get access to lamb cell lines, beef cell lines, pork cell lines, any cell line they would like, and have a way to get that to market within a reasonable amount of time. And then there's a bit of a royalty at the end.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I mean, looking at our business model, before we did any calculations, it's like, wow, there's all this stuff lying around. There's 8 billion tons of it littering the planet, and plastic's got twice the energy density of coal. You're like, why is it lying around? So, the initial thing was like, this has to be, if you can turn this into a fuel that you can use, it has to be profitable. But then as our thinking's, progressed, really the only way this kind of technology makes any sense is that if you can get tens of thousands of these very small machines out in very, disparate places, because the challenge with plastic is that it's not worth picking up. It's not worth picking up and filling a 40-ton truck with 2 tons of plastic because it's so bulky and light, it just becomes uneconomical to transport. So the reason plastic's just lying littered everywhere is because you can't actually move it to a facility to get rid of it. So you have to move the facility to the plastic. The only way that can happen is if you're making thousands of machines, and you can't make thousands of machines and support them all over the world. I mean, we're not, Toyota or Honda. We don't make engines like that. So then the model shifted. So, we're basically trying to come up with a easy-to-make machine that can be made anywhere with off-the-shelf parts, pretty much anywhere in the world, and can be supported everywhere. And then we're going to license the machine. But really, we think there's probably more potential, and this is in the future, is that, everyone now, there's a carbon market, and everyone is, and now, eventually, 20 years later, agrees that we should have a carbon market because it's a real problem. And I think that's going to happen with plastic too, because you know, if we don't all boil to death by 2050, we're all going to choke on plastic. And human sperm count will go to 0. You know, these kind of challenges. You know, plastic is, you know, it's kind of in the background to climate change, but you know, it's a real problem worldwide for all of us. So that's the opportunistic, you know, way of looking at this as a business, but it's also solving a problem. But really, we're not looking for it to be circular. We'd quite like it if everyone just stopped making plastic and came up with something else. In which case, our machines, they're pretty much, you can retrofit them all to be gasifiers instead. They could all be, you know, doing biodiesel gasifiers and instead of plastic. They're just these are just very high temperature machines, but they're pretty much the same. So, you know, we kind of hope that we get rid of all the plastic and we then repurpose these machines into things that are using actual circular materials. We don't want plastic to be the circular material. I'd really not like plastic to be, you know, constantly churned out. There's already too much of it.
Thanks, Simon. I just realized, I feel like there's one aspect of your business we didn't highlight, which is the shape of the machine.
For the beetle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sure everyone remembers your business.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the machines are called beetles and the company's called Scarabtech because I don't know, a dung beetle was the perfect analogy. You know, it's this little beetle that runs around picking up all the shit, you know. You know, and turning it into something useful and then making something flower out of it. So we thought that was the perfect thing. So all of our machines are called beetles. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. So even though the question was about money and revenue models, clearly all of you impact entrepreneurs couldn't get away from the impact. So now we get to dive into the impact a bit more. So again, you guys have touched upon it, but if you could share with us how your businesses have created environmental impacts to date, we'd love to hear it. And also if you wanted to share your aspirations for impact beyond today, happy to hear that as well.
Okay, let me go. Yeah, well, right now our current product, most people know about the modular shoes made from plastic waste. With the modularity enables for recurrent usage of plastics. We can imagine this technology being licensed in different countries, and that would, you know, enable us scale even better and even grow the impact. And so, additionally, I was trying to talk about the carbon decomposition technology we're working on. This technology will release next year. So, first infused in your shoes, it will also impact the aeronautics and also the automotive industry. And I intentionally started with the rockets and the aeroplanes. And so it's going to impact those industries in the longer time. Additionally, we also building a technology known as supply chain, and this will be released by next week. First is so what we see is that it's like you're on top of a mountain and someone is throwing stone downstairs and you're dodging the stone. And we realized that that's what we're doing. We're trying to dodge the stones. What we're trying to go back to is trying to tackle the plastic from the point source. And so this what's called this technology, it's blockchain-based technology that enables you to be able to trace your supply chain and also allows for customer transparency. And it will also impact aside our business, also impact other businesses, other fashion businesses, other health tech businesses, and also even be able to, for manufacturers, be able to trace where your plastics are, how you can readily be able to collect them and all. So the impact we are creating is unlimited. It's unlimited, and I would also emphasize on the vision of the entrepreneur. Impact doesn't have to be small or ugly, and so you can think big and also make a huge impact. Thank you.
Thanks, Bella.
We're an early stage company still, so we've moved from R&D and we're heading to pilot hopefully in the next 18 months. So our sort of the current production of what we've been able to do in terms of meat, beef, lamb, and pork has not really moved the needle just yet. The fact that we've been able to do it is obviously an achievement in itself. The burgers taste delicious, which I think has been a significant component in our immediate impact as a startup by changing the narrative, particularly in South Africa. I'm assuming some of you know, but also, just in case you don't, pretty big meat-eating culture, pretty significant cultural component. So we've been able to create a new narrative, which is, I think, wedging that this idea that plant-based or vegan food is pretty average. I think that's partly what we've done so far. Had large, fantastic conversations with big retailers and food manufacturers and meat companies in South Africa. I think that for us, and for me personally, being able to sit across the table from the head of the Red Meat Association is quite a powerful thing. And for them not to get too grumpy I think was the second best thing. So that's where we are now. In terms of what we believe we can do in the next 2 years, we want to be able to build a 10,000 liter facility that starts producing 10 tons of meat per month. It takes about a month for us to produce our meat. And then we move that and start scaling it up, and ideally through other, as I said, partners and companies. When you start introducing the meat industry into that, who are currently killing in South Africa over 1 billion animals every single year, worldwide it's about 70 billion. If you start saying how do we disrupt that, the impact becomes massive. It's $1 trillion enterprise, and we're taking a chunk of it. Some of the estimates there are estimates on what a life cycle assessment could be in terms of the product that we're making. But I mean, upwards of 90% of land usage, we've got it back. We don't need as much water for the food that we produce. The emissions, to this date, I don't think the meat production that we do farts, but cows do fart, and I think everybody knows what happens with that. So there's a number of reasons that we're essentially just going to make a conversation about food systems redundant by removing the need to intensively farm animals. And I use the word intensively deliberately. I'm not considering subsistence farming, but I'm really talking about the stuff that is mass. So in terms of impact, I think over an extended period of time, our industry and others within the alternative protein will greatly change the narrative and make delicious food that makes people happy.
Yeah, we're definitely starting to see more of that behavior change, right?
Yeah, and there's good and bad things about that behavior change. You've seen significant growth in certain places, but I still think the plant-based and Iron Now One has lost some of that over the last couple of years, and I think there needs a bit of a reboot, and that's where I think we get to come in and say, let's look at it. There's a bit of a bridge between conventional animal agriculture, plant-based, and us, and we might be the ones that can kind of bring everybody together.
And Simon?
We're also an early stage startup, but I think the impact that we've had already is, in our pilot projects, we've got 4 of them in 4 different countries. And it's, the one that I'm closest to is obviously the one in Johannesburg, where, we're taking plastic from, some of them are branded clients, like Mitsubishi, one of their factories. They've got all these plastic shavings that they usually just send to landfill. And we're taking those, pelletizing them, feeding them to our machine, and making fuel, which, because of South African legislation, it's not quite clear if we're allowed to sell it. So we've just been donating it. So we give it to animal shelters and children's charities, and you're just giving away fuel, which is really expensive. And it suddenly catalyzes the thing. Suddenly Mitsubishi realizes what they're throwing in literally paying to dispose of. And you start to build up a whole little community, little economy around these little machines. So as a future thing, if you can replicate that 10,000 times all over the world, where you're feeding one of these machines and you're making 300 to 400 liters of fuel every day, that can just feed out into an entire community. And in some cases, maybe it's sold to a refiner. In other cases, maybe it's going into lawnmowers. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's all going to be dependent on where it's locally actually placed. And that, for me, that impact is interesting, because it seems to people are suddenly looking around going, oh, it's a resource? I thought it was waste, and the companies are the same. From the company perspective, they stop thinking about it once they're making their product. They're carving something out, and there's all these shavings. The shavings go in the bin. That's just not in their thinking. And I think increasingly, these kind of projects put it back in their thinking, because that's, they should be thinking about it.
Yeah, I think what's a common thread between all of your answers is that, your impact is not kind of this one thing. You guys are really working on systems change, and so what's really cool about that is the impact can come from multiple sources, whether that's, new economies, social behavior change. So Yeah, really interesting. So I think in the service of time, we've got one last question for the panelists. So would love to hear stories of partnership. I think these days partnerships, especially for regenerative businesses, are our currency for growth. So would love to hear how each of you have, had or are currently embarking upon a partnership that has either supported R&D or more effective implementation. So partnerships with government, other private sector, nonprofits. But yeah, I would love to hear those stories for some inspiration.
All right. I'm going to answer briefly. I would first start with we Africans do not invest in ourselves. And, when we take all these projects and people I just need fast money, and fast money is never sustainable. And so we got some support from the American National Science Foundation. And they tell us we invest in risky projects. And that's a mentality, that's a growth mentality. And so we got support from them. And never from any organization in Africa, but let's look at your projects like, this doesn't make any sense. Anyway, beyond that, on our current shoes made from plastics, we currently also partnered with Amazon. And so what we also saw is that we saw a lot of sentiments like, why you partner with Amazon? Amazon is not green and all those things. A lot of people do not know that Amazon is investing billions of dollars trying to promote sustainability, even on their website and everything. These guys are trying. But also, additionally, we also need to scale. If you don't scale, there's no impact. And so with these kind of partnerships, we're able to even grow further. With Amazon, we're able to scale into several major markets in the EU, including the UK. For us, it's easy growth. I'll stop there. Thank you.
I like the use of the word risky. I think that's a partner that understands the risk is crucial, and I think it is possible to find people who are in a different situation, a corporate or government or whatever, who is happy to sort of take on some of that risk and allow you to do your thing, because that's ultimately what a startup needs to do. It's just do your thing, because everything you're doing is you're kind of like learning as you go. Imagine about 3 or 4 years ago, I don't know if you remember, there was a world event that happened, a pandemic, I think, and we decided, to start a company. And so firstly, that was a crazy idea for many people, and then I went to a bunch of people saying, hey, we want to grow meat in a lab. And I still don't think my parents understand exactly what I do, but you can imagine how difficult the conversations were in the beginning. And we were going to universities around the country in South Africa, and I mean, literally people laughed us out the door. And I think if you haven't been laughed out at the door as a startup, you're doing it wrong. So luckily, a really awesome organization based in Cape Town called BioCity, or now called Uvu Africa, found out about what we were doing and saying, we've just built this awesome lab during COVID and now there's no one there. Do you need the keys? And they gave us the keys. Well, they gave me the keys, and to be honest, I'm not a scientist. But luckily I know how to convince people to jump in a lab and start doing some cool stuff, which they did. And I think that kind of partnership, Uvu in the beginning, just saying, here's the blank canvas, go and do what you'd like. We were able to learn a hell of a lot cheaply on their expense, and that was also through government funding, I think, as well. But that enabled us to start off, and that was the sort of the seed, part of a lot of what we were doing ourselves to get this thing going, because it's incredibly difficult what we're doing. Don't get me wrong. It is incredibly difficult to try and replicate a cow outside of a cow. And then we grew, and literally and figuratively, and then we found ourselves partnering with this French organization or company called MAN, M-A-N-E, MAN. And MAN were incredible, because first they're a billion-dollar enterprise coming out of France, south of France, I think it is. And we went up to them and said, hey, do you want to just partner with us on some of the tastings that we're doing so we can make delicious products? You guys are French, you know what you're doing. We know how to brine or barbecue meat, but let's work together. And MAN were like, they got it immediately. Now, this is a massive organization with a $1 billion R&D budget. I'm not going to tell you what our R&D budget is, but it's not $1 billion yet. And they were able to help us accelerate in an area in food science, which actually wasn't any interest to us. We're trying to do tissue culture. We're trying to scale engineering. I'm not worrying about blending spices. But that taste component was crucial, and was why we were able to get people up to try our burgers, to try our meat. Chefs, meat eaters, who name it, and everyone who's tried it so far has been blown away by the product. And those two relationships that we've built, we've still got, I'm very proud of them. We've formed and formalized the relationship with MAN, for example, through it's an agreement where we're actually now proactively developing product together, and they are looking at how do we actually scale this in an ingredients way. So, yeah, I think a small partnership and a big partnership is important for a startup.
Incredible. And Simon, how about you? Any government partners in the mix?
No, government partners are the hardest.
They will come though.
Yeah. I know we're out of time, so I'll keep it short. I mean, certainly the partnerships that we've had all kind of grew organically. You know, the first one was Burning Man, but then when people see it, then suddenly people get excited. And as long as you really believe what you're doing, sometimes people will challenge you. Like we get lots of challenges from Greenpeace, who are very upset that we're making petrochemicals, for example. But that then forces you to, you know, really address that in your business model, and then they become your partners. And that's sort of happened all the way through us. So, you know, and then you suddenly meet people that are on the same journey as you. So we partnered with Plastic Odyssey, who are doing a 3-year ocean expedition with different plastic processing technologies and doing showcases all the way around the world. We met Cubic, we met GIIG and Africa. You know, so everybody that came into our story, you know, you excite them with your story, they give you feedback, and suddenly they often become your partner. And it's very hard to predict, and I don't have any real like insight into it. It's just, you know, believe what you're doing, be open to what people say back to you. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes criticism's great. You know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess what's interesting about some of your partnerships is, you know, normally we're looking for alignment, but sometimes when we find misalignment, there's actually a partnership there. Yeah.
You know, if Greenpeace are getting angry with you, maybe you're doing something right. Was that not?
Thing, right? Yeah. So
It's good PR as well.
You know, it's just good dialogue. Yeah, it's just good dialogue.
I guess, Brett, similar for you, meat companies want to chat with you, so.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just want to thank you all so much for being here. I think it's not underappreciated that it's, you know, been years of blood, sweat, and tears that you guys have all put into this and distilled into these great insights for us. So thank you again, and congratulations for all of your traction and impact to date, and good luck at the gala tomorrow.
Thank you very much.